The Siege of Paris was the second major paid DLC expansion for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, coming out August 12th of 2021, almost a full year after Valhalla's launch. In this review, I will break down everything in the Siege de Paris, and whether I think it's worth it to buy it or not. So without further ado, let's get into the review. The Siege of Paris takes place 8 years after the end of the main game, with Ava being in her late 30s. It has her going to Francia to combat the insanity of Charles the Fat. Ava will have to kill various enemies in order for Paris to be exposed enough for an assault like you've never seen before. The Siege of Paris offers a vast new land to explore, filled with opportunities at every turn. While the DLC isn't that different from the main game in most ways, it still adds enough substance and new content to still be enjoyable. So to start, two of the biggest additions to the game are the swords and the scythes. These are two new weapons that are almost exclusively available for DLC owners. Although there are several of these in the base game, these came out with the DLC when it was released to the public. One-handed swords were put into the game due to heavy fan backlash when it was confirmed that there would be none in the game at launch. I mean, yeah, it took almost a year to get them, but late is always better than never. Scythes were a complete surprise to me when I got my first one, because I just did not expect these to be in the DLC. I had only heard people talking about the one-handed sword editions, and absolutely nothing about the scythes at all. It's also important to mention that both of these weapons play completely different, although they are similar to existing weapons already. The scythes have an attack almost exactly like the heavy axes, while the swords operate exactly like the bearded axes. Unpopular opinion, but I don't care about the lack of one-handed swords at launch. Bearded axes already fill the mid-range and fast attack power of the sword, and my worst fears were fulfilled when I got the DLC. They played exactly the same. The animations are different, sure, but the damage, attack speed, and feeling are almost exactly the same. It's cool to have the different animations, but they still function and fill the same niche. I could totally see them justifying adding in one-handed swords if they played differently. Like in Wrath of the Druids, sickle swords played like a fusion of seaxes and axes. They felt different from each other, unlike the new swords. I just never understood the hype for one-handed swords at all. Thankfully, this problem does not apply to the scythes as well. It kind of plays like a longer range and faster hitting version of the heavy axe. That being said, I do enjoy both of these weapon types, as boring as the swords are in relation to what we already have. Continuing on the topic of gear, the roles from Wrath of the Druids are reversed. In Druids, there were 8 armor sets and 2 new weapons to pick up, but in the Siege of Paris, the exact opposite is true. There are 8 new weapons, half being scythes and half being swords, while there are only 2 armor sets to collect. The armors are very basic. They have a unique look to them, which is nice, I appreciate, and they have a very interesting set bonus. One of them is used as an assassin set, while the other is used for, I don't know. The paladin set is confusingly worded. I have no idea what it's trying to tell me. I don't have footage of it. Just try to imagine some weird line that sounds so obscure that you have no idea what it actually means, but it's supposed to actually do something. That made no sense, but whatever. And I think it's kind of obvious that I've never used these sets other than for the transmog, which you see in the background. The Reaper set is kind of useless because it involves stealth. Like, I mean, who actually plays stealth in Valhalla? If you saw my last video on the game, you will know that I do not like stealth at all. Although it may take a long time to find the part when I say it, the stealth is always buggy and just see no point in using the set. It does have an interesting look, so I can see using it for transmog, definitely. And the verdict is that both of these suck, and I do not recommend using either of these. Buy Siege for the scythes, not for the armor. And how can I talk about Paris without mentioning the 2 new enemy types, cavalry and heavy cavalry. These are both horseback enemies that Eivor will have to fight against. The normal cavalry being just a new enemy with a bow and a spear on a horseback. The heavy variation also does have a bigger flair to it. It plays the same as the cavalry, except it has an increased health bar and throws spears. There's absolutely nothing special about these two. It's such a letdown from what I came to expect after the vast amount of enemies in the Wrath of the Druids. One of the other things that I need to bring up is the world, and boy is it interesting. It's a very stark contrast to the main game. Francia is a war-torn and horrendous country. Much like today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. That was harsh. I'm so sorry to all of you. If Ireland is distinguishable from England, this is a whole nother planet. Ireland pales in comparison from how different the two of these look to each other. Francia has smoke and fog in the air at all times. But despite being a giant battlefield, it still does have its moments of beauty. And now onto the rats. These inhabit the Parisian underground and will protect their home at all costs. Eivor cannot kill these petits diables as they are way too small and can evade her attacks easily. Eivor will have to parkour around them or scare them into a hole to cover it up. It's actually quite an interesting thing to add to the game. It makes traversing the Paris undergrounds really interesting. Francia is just so sad and hopeless, and I love it. France is just so unique compared to England. I mean, I'm not a fan of sad worlds. I hated episode 2 of The Fate of Atlantis, just because of how mad I didn't even say that right, the environment looked. And what I think is so cool is that Valhalla now has 3 different AC settings from previous games in this singular one. London is featured in Syndicate, Francia is, well, France from Unity, and the most surprising is that Vinland is actually North America, which is something we already know, but what most people don't know is that this is actually Connor's village. Eivor is literally the one to give the village the apple that Connor uses to see his vision in AC3. Cool stuff. Enough Assassin's Creed lore. We need to talk about the story and how it is. The overall narrative is quite good, leaning more to the political side of things than Wrath. Also, there's no magic, which is disappointing in and of itself, but the campaign is roughly the same length of Wrath at 10 to 15 hours in total, but it's able to stretch much longer if you do side quests. And to the joy of many hardcore fans, as well as me, the Siege of Paris brings back something I've missed for so long. Black box assassinations. Now, if you don't remember what these are, because it's been so long since we've seen them, a quick summary is that these are missions where you have to infiltrate an area using any method given to you, and open the target up for a cinematic assassination. These can include talking to allies or just finding random people that need your help. These happen several times in the campaign, having to talk to several civilians to find out where the target is and how to get to them. This opens up branches in the quest that can be used to alter how you go about completing the objective. And when the killing blow comes, boy is it worth it. These targets aren't just simply taken out with a hidden blade, but can be taken out using the environment given to you. These things are just so much fun to do because of the freedom it gives you as a person. I sincerely hope that this stays for future games. I really enjoyed them in Unity and Syndicate, and I love them here. And just like in Wrath of the Druids, they implemented a new type of faction mission. Instead of King's Pleas, we have Rebel missions. These are missions that require Eivor to do various things like retrieve supplies from an enemy camp, or just wipe out an entire squad full of enemies. These can be done solo or with a team of soldiers, but team missions are generally harder because each surviving team member will give you extra currency to spend to get rewards. This currency is called deniers, an even worse pronunciation than leaves from Unity, and this is coming from someone who's been taking French in school, although I'm not claiming to have ever been good at it. Deniers can be traded in with your ally named Pierre, which by the way is like the most French sounding name I've ever heard in my life. That's actually a lie. These can be used to buy the Reaper's armor sets as well as unique runes and weapons only available in Francia. The one complaint that I do have is that, in general, the voice acting is really bad. You can tell Ubisoft did not hire any French VOs for any of the side characters. I mean, it's the most forced accent I've ever heard in my life. Listen to this.
Mother is here to aid us. She is almost ready to begin. Make your way to the church.
You see what I mean? It's just really bad. But now let's talk about the opposite of this. The good voice acting. The person who is by far the most interesting is Charles the Fat. He just commands all of your attention when he is on screen. The main antagonist is the most compelling, which is something that I always love. When the antagonist is well performed and can actually have an interest in the character, it allows the story to be so much more engaging because we enjoy who we are fighting against. Kind of like Thanos from Avengers and his more sympathetic side. Though, in contrast to Thanos, Charles is not sympathetic at all. He is, well, kind of off his rockers for the entire thing. He might be crazy, because he kind of yells at himself the entire time, and says he was invaded by a demon for his sins. I mean, this is literally what he thinks. He kind of yells a lot at it when he's alone. The voice does manifest physically at points, and it's really interesting. The real-life Charles actually was recorded to have had a quote-unquote demonic incident when he was a child, so I guess this is also a reference to that, which is actually really cool that they incorporated a known aspect of Charles into his character. And speaking of Charles' character, he's the really threatening kind of person, not the get up and do it himself kind of guy. Just his presence alone is enough to invoke fear. I think that's a really great way to build a character, but when I want a character like that, I expect them to go all the way. Seeing the big bad physically fighting really sets me off. It just doesn't feel right. I won't spoil what happens, but this also leads me to the boss battle section. And I actually like two of them. One is the legendary animal fight that you can find by roaming the map. One of the reasons why I love this is because the battle changes and adapts. It's not like it's a second phase, but halfway through the cow literally runs away and Ava is forced to chase it to its next location. I really wish stuff like this was more present in more games, just in general. Bosses shouldn't just come with their own moveset, they should come with their own experience. The second one that I like is the last boss fight of the game. This isn't the one, I wouldn't dare spoil that for you. And the thing that's special about this is that you cannot kill the enemy using your weapons. It's possible, but this may take a while to accomplish. Ava needs to use her surroundings to her advantage. This is the only way to kill the boss. There are also some other ways to do it and spare their life so you don't have their blood on your hands, and it's really cool to see something like this in an AC game, where you have to use your environment to your advantages. And now I need to talk about the actual physical siege. It's amazing. It's an assault like you've never seen before. It's a full-on warfare, destroying everything in your path in order to get to your objective. It is amazing. It's an experience. I loved the entire siege. Probably now is a good time to mention that the majority of the DLC is actually setting up the siege itself. It's all the preparations and political drama that goes along in the background that leads up to the siege of Paris. And the actual siege is made of multiple different parts. Finding Count Odo, as I'm showing in the back, and just navigating your way across the entirety of that island in the middle of Paris. I don't even know what it's called. I probably should have researched that, but I'm not doing that. So yeah, it's actually really long. It's like, it took me 2 hours to complete, like, the entire siege, which is actually really cool that the siege takes that long to do. It's great. Overall, I think the Siege of Paris is quite good. But I must say the same thing that I said about Wrath of the Druids. Buy it, but at a discount. I got it in Wrath for $26 total, so $13 for one of them is decent. Although, I think you should probably wait till it's around $10. I mean, it probably is on sale for $10. I mean, hell, I spent that much in the Etsu collection. So yeah, buy it at a discount or do whatever you want. It's good and enjoyable, but there isn't nearly enough new features and content to worry paying $25 freaking. Well, anyway, that's it for the video. I hope you folks enjoyed this. Didn't take me that long to make, but you know, life stuff happens. Consider subscribing and dropping a like, as it really helps me out. I'm a small channel and I would appreciate it. When I uploaded my year 1 review of Valhalla, I only had 100 subscribers. And in around a month, I have 121, which is kind of insane to me. Thank you all so much. I'm glad you guys have been enjoying my videos, and I hope you will continue to support me. Anyway, this will most likely be my last Valhalla video for the next year or so, until the year 2 review comes out. I do have a lot of other videos planned for the future though. I've finished AC Revelations, so that'll be coming out soon. I need to do a Fate of Atlantis DLC review, as well as a review of AC3 and Liberation, if I ever get the chance. I have both of them, I'll see what I do with it. And so, to anyone who watched it all the way here and enjoyed my video, I hope you have a great day.